Oh, hello everyone, this is me, Dusty Circuit here, and it's been a few days since my last, video of this, series where I am, documenting, all my experiences, with all the computers I've owned in my life. But, I assure you, this series hasn't gone anywhere, and I in fact do plan on finishing it. Though, there's not a whole lot more to cover. Like, we pretty much covered all of, pretty much done my childhood and my teen years, and, really, we just have, kind of my adulthood. Though, this is really where it starts to get really interesting because what I'm going to be talking about today is my very first PC that I built myself, and also for pretty much my first foray into PC building. And I have I have quite the story to share about this one. Though, to recap, we've covered the like my very first computer that I got when I was like a toddler. Uh, the computer that replaced that like was in kind of my later childhood. The computer that replaced that, and the computer that replaced that one, which got me, which is during my teenage years, and got me my very first, which what I had my very first experience playing Minecraft on, and also my first experience like upgrading and repairing computers. So this is my first computer, my first PC build, and really really the how and why of it is so at the time of I had been on the Aquired server for basically since 2014, and I was to join Botcraft Obsidian, or ACO, in 2017, and I would be think this is around either late in 2017 or early in 2018, and at this point, the HP desktop that I was still using at the time, it would still be a functional computer, but it was clearly showing its age, and like when it had been showing its age for a few years at that point, and also had I not have replaced had I have replaced it later than I did, it would have delayed my uh ability to play other games, and also possibly delay the time I would start my YouTube channel. And so really how it happened was I was to meet a person who had joined ACO, and about a few months, like I was to talk to them for about a few months, and uh and I think I think it's in some of the conversations I had with them, uh they would have talked to me, that they would have told me that they had just recently upgraded their computer, they just bought new computer parts. I actually I also kind of remember their username. I think they were Quark A, though I'll probably put it in the video in editing. But I don't know if that's still their username. For all they know, they probably might have changed it by now. But at some point in the conversation, I believe during one conversation that I had with them, they would have told me that they still had their old computer parts, like that they replaced, and and I believe I would have told them that I really about my computer situation, uh and I believe at one point they would have just pitched the idea of actually sending me of shipping the computer parts to me, and that they would cover the cost of shipping, because it would only, I believe on their end it would have been only $25, or I believe around there. So though this person, I'm not going to disclose exactly where they live, but they are within they are in the US, and of course I live in the US, which means that that really only ground shipping would have been required to for this to be shipped to my house, or Roy, it's my parents' house. I'm still with my parents, and so I then proceeded to give them my home address, and before any of you like scream this at your screen, I am well aware of the risk in sharing personal information with people online, especially those you haven't really known for more than a few years. But nothing really nothing really seemed amiss about this person at all, and it seemed like they were genuinely actually trying to do a good deed to me. Like, there was no at least I couldn't tell any red flags about them needing to needing to tell them my home address, that they would use this for other purposes than to just send me the computer parts. But I'm well aware that that's a risk I took, and if anything, I'm kind of happy I did, because it meant that I would get that I would basically get free computer parts sent to me. And though I don't though I don't condone like other people do this sort of thing, because it is a risk. Like, there are people. I'm not gonna get into this really, but that 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 is a risk that I am not condoning others necessarily take. But like generally, you wanna know somebody really well before you exchange personal information with them. But anyway, that aside, uh, the so what actually I ended up receiving in this deal was the CPU and the motherboard, which and they actually weren't sure how to ship the CPU, because the CPU is an AMD CPU with pins on the bottom of it. Kind of spoiler alert as to what CPU this is going to be, but they weren't really sure how to ship it without those pins getting damaged. And so I made the suggestion that they just leave it in the motherboard socket and then just ship it that way. And so that's what they did. And I believe the other parts they would have packaged separately. And so really I ended up I got the CPU an Asus motherboard, uh uh an 8 GB RAM kit, a 1 TB hard drive, and a USB thumb drive with the Windows 10 installation media already installed onto it. So that I'd have a way to install Windows on the computer. But really the only parts that I would have had to supply myself were the power supply, the graphics card, but and also the case. I also forgot to mention they shipped the CPU cooler as well. Though the power supply and the graphics card, well, the power supply I would have taken from the I would have just taken from the computer I was using at the time. And the graphics card I ended up using was the RX 460 that I actually had purchased to try to upgrade the HP with, but I ended up not using it because it basically wasn't compatible with it. It didn't work well with it due to the processor bottlenecking it. But I ended up kind of hanging on to that card for a year, about, and I'm glad I did, because this means I would have a graphics card to use for this build. Though they said that they actually did that they had a graphics card that they would have used originally with this build, but they opted not to send it to me because they mentioned it was having artifacting problems. And I believe I would have mentioned to them that I have a graphics card to use already. That's actually brand new. And so they opted not to send me that, which I can't blame them. But I believe the shipping time, like for it to arrive at my home, would have been about 1 to 2 weeks. Though when it arrived, due to just my family's financial situation at the time, I would not be able to complete this build and for about a few months to come. Though though one day my though one day my mom told me that she would that she would take me to Micro Center so that I can buy a case to put these computer parts in. And so that's basically what that's what I did. I went to she drove me to Micro Center, and I believe on a Friday night, because that's that was when I think they got their paycheck. And so I believe on a Friday night my mom took me to Micro Center, and I picked up a Corsair 200R case. And though one of the factors that dictated what case I could buy was that this motherboard was an ATX motherboard, so I would have had to buy an ATX case to put it in. And I was kind of limited on how much money I can spend on this, and given and I would have, I believe, chosen a few different cases based on my budget at the time. And though when I went to the store, I believe one of the clerks there just would have recommended me get the Corsair 200R because it is a pretty good case for the money, which I believe at the time I paid about $50 for it. And so that night I went home with I got home with my computer case, and I believe I would put the computer, I would assemble this computer the next day. And though because my room is always messy, just because I'm too lazy to keep it clean, I would actually clean off the kitchen table and lay a bed sheet on top of it just to give me a clean surface to work. And it was there where I actually assembled the computer. And then I believe the process of assembling it would have taken me, I'm guessing, about 2 to 3 hours. Or maybe it's like 2 hours. And though this was a rather simple build, like it only involved just putting the motherboard in the case, and then the graphics card in the first slot on the motherboard, and I just needed to install one hard drive, in the power supply, and I think that was it. And though a lot of it was, though a lot of the time involved in the build would have been uh, screwing things in place and also figuring out the cleanest way to route cables. Though when all that was complete, I just took the assembled computer into my room. I I hooked up a keyboard, mouse, and monitor to it. I plugged a power cord into it and plugged that into the wall. Then I turned it on, and it booted to the BIOS screen. And then I turned the computer off, put the flash drive, the Windows 10 installation flash drive into one of the USB ports on the back. Then I turned it on, and it just booted right into the Windows 10 installation screen. And then from there, I just followed the steps. And then I believe within about maybe 10 to about 30 minutes or so, I was at a desktop, and I was able to install all my apps and transfer my files from my old computer to my new computer. Though I think I wouldn't actually do that till a bit later, but I was able to get myself up and running with my web browser, Discord, and Minecraft. I think within the rest of that day, and I could notice, and I definitely noticed a performance difference between this computer and the previous computer. Though I didn't mention what hardware went into this computer for now until now. So I guess I'll mention it now. And so the processor was an AMD FX 6300, and the motherboard was an Asus, I believe a M5A 97 R2.0. And the RAM was just I believe it was an ADATA 8 GB kit, and I believe the speed was like 1600 megahertz, and then just and for a graphics card, I just used the RX 460. Which was a gigabyte dual fan 4 GB card, and for the power supply at the time, I was an EVGA 600B, which I actually would have replaced the Thermaltake power supply with in the previous computer when its fan started to fail. And for storage, I just had a I believe it was a Western Digital 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive. And I believe it just came, and I believe and for a CPU core, I was just sent the the core that comes in the box with the CPU. And and I guess while I'm on the subject of computer specs, I just thought I'd kind of address something. It seems like the AMD FX 6300, or even just the FX processors in general, it seems like they seem to have been some of the most controversial CPUs in like the history of computers. And also up there with the with the Intel NetBurst architecture, or the Pentium 4s. And reason being that the bulldozer architecture, which is what the AMD FX processors were based on, so this architecture was implemented in such a way that that the cores were basically the CPU would be divided into basically 2 to 4 modules of 2 cores each, which would share certain resources. And AMD marketed these as 4, 6, and 8 core processors respectively. Basically the 4000 series being 4 cores, the 6000 series being 6 cores, the 8000 series being 8 cores. But though there's been intense controversy over this, because despite the shared resources, AMD still marketed these as having as having 4, 6, and 8 cores, despite the fact that on the architectural level, they were 2 modules just despite the fact that there are cores that were sharing resources. And it's just, this controversy has just become so widespread that, like, if you were to go to a PC forum and share your and mention your computer specs, and mention that you have an AMD FX processor, you probably get quite a few responses. For kind of quite a few responses of people going, oh, that processor, oh, that or whatever. But it's a lot of people have just, like, largely because of this, and also because it didn't perform quite to the standards that Intel's Core i series 2000 series processors and onwards have set. That's just, the AMD FX processors have just gotten this bad rap that really has existed from the release of the FX processors to really when they fell out of relevancy when once they were finally replaced with Ryzen. And though as for whether or not though really how I feel about this, as far as if it was a good decision for the company, for AMD to release the bulldozer architecture, it was a bad decision. It actually would ultimately it would nearly lead to the death of the company. Like not a whole lot of people really knew about this, but by I believe it was around 2014 to 2016 or so, AMD was had gone to the verge of bankruptcy, and really had it not have been for the success of Ryzen, AMD likely would have folded, and then Intel would become the monopoly of CPUs. Though, let's just say a lot of us we are happy that Ryzen it was the success that it was, and AMD is not only allowed to continue be a going concern for Intel, but also but also become quite the force to be reckoned with. And AMD has made strides so much so that their products are in many ways on par with Intel's products, and even in some regards exceeded in Intel standards, at least in some regards. And it's likely that this will remain the case for several years to come. And really what's happening now is, while AMD used to be not just an underdog, but like an endangered species, but like they went from that to being competitive with Intel to the point of taking a significant amount of their market share, and also being competitive to the point that really that AMD and Intel are trading blows and competing for and are competing price wise, and which ultimately means in the end for us consumers, we get better. It's ultimately better in the end for us, the consumer, because not only do we have more options, but also better prices or lower prices. So, though that aside, I personally did not let the controversy surrounding the AMD FX processors to like make me to hurt my confidence in this build. It's because, as I've stated in my previous video, all that should really matter to you is like when you upgrade, when you upgrade to new computer hardware, or at least new to you. What really should matter is that it was an upgrade over what you had before. It shouldn't necessarily matter to you if it's the latest, if it's the newest stuff on the block, or it's the best, or if it's the best hardware. It should really only matter like if it was an if to you it it was an upgrade over what you had before. And that's really how I saw actually using the AMD FX processor, I actually in my daily computer. And also the other thing is I also didn't have the frame of reference that comes from, like, if I were to use an Intel processor from around that same time period, and then I'd use the FX processor and I go, oh, this sucks. I just didn't have that. I just didn't have that I didn't have that experience. And even still, the FX the FX 6300 was an upgrade over the Phenom 9650 that my HP computer came with, because just despite the lack of the instructions for clock, at least relative to Intel's Sandy Bridge platform and newer, it was still better than my previous processor, and also the clock speed was higher, and it's going from four cores to 6 cores. I guess debatably 6 cores, but really for all intents and purposes 6 cores. But well, I meant to say debatably 3 cores, but for all intents and purposes 6 cores. But anyway, so from so within my first week of using this computer, I noticed the first real problem, at least that I had with it, which was that the CPU fan would get really noisy, like even like just sitting at the desktop, the fan would get pretty loud. And I was able to quiet it down somewhat by changing the fan profile settings in the BIOS from standard to silent, which kind of lowers the lowers the fan speed, but 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 even then, that only kind of slightly fixed the problem. It didn't fix the actual root problem, which was that AMD's stock stock coolers, or at least their box coolers, like that actually come if you were to buy a retail packaged AMD processor, like the actual cooler that comes in the box. Uh, these CPU coolers, while they did work and technically did their job, that they didn't do it particularly well. And like they would keep the processor from reaching its T junction, or temperature at which it starts to thermal throttle. But in order to keep the CPU cool, that like I believe they used a 70 millimeter fan, and that little fan would have to spin like I believe at the time I used CPU ID hardware info as a hardware monitor at the time, and like I saw that like the fan speed for the CPU fan get in excess of 3,500 RPM at times, and even sometimes touch 4,000 RPM. And even even just running Minecraft, which really only used between 1 and 2 cores, that CPU fan would speed up to the point of almost sounding like a hairdryer on low, it was that bad. And within about a week or so, I decided to that the first thing I was gonna upgrade was the CPU cooler. And so I asked my mom to go to Micro Center and pick up a Hyper 212 Evo. And I actually have done like kind of research, like as for like what's the best like aftermarket CPU cooler for the money. And at the time I wasn't really looking to go water cooling, or AIO, like all-in-one water cooling. And because really my biggest factor was price, and I was because I was still relying on my parents' income at this time. I was just forced to make more pragmatic decisions when it comes to my computer upgrades. And I opted for the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo because I've seen a lot of other people use it, and it seemed to be a really good value, like for about $35, or at least that's how that's what my mom ended up paying for it at the time. You get a 120 millimeter tower heatsink and a fan to go with it, and an adjustable mounting bracket, which allows for mounting to AMD or Intel motherboards, and also enough hardware to basically allow this cooler to be compatible with pretty much every socket and every platform, basically from nearly the past decade or so, which basically means this cooler or this heatsink would be compatible with pretty much any computer, so long as you have the case space for it. And though Cooler Master also makes smaller versions for those who have a case that's too small to fit the Hyper 212 Evo. Though because this cooler actually requires you to remove the back plates, at least AMD motherboards come with a back plate. That allows the and also mounting hardware that screws to the motherboard that allows the stock coolers to clip in place. And in order to install this cooler, you have to remove that and install the back plate that it comes with. And also because of that, I had to make use of I had to take both side panels off the case so that I could access the back of the motherboard tray, so that I can to gain easy access to the bottom of the motherboard to allow for the installation of the back plate. And I believe it would have taken me around the one thing that kind of had me a bit confused was the Hyper 212 Evo's adjustable bracket also has like the screws that it has 4 screws on it that are that are spring loaded and captive, and but if you were to look closely at each of those screws, there's actually a slot with 3 different holes that's like carved into it. And the purpose of that is to allow for the screws to go into different positions, to allow the bracket to screw on to be mounted to a wide variety of different sockets. And how it came in the box, those screws were in the wrong place, and I actually would have had to move them over by one notch to get it to fit. It took me, I think, a good probably 20 to 30 minutes to figure that out, but eventually I did figure it out, and I was able to get the new CPU cooler installed, and I was then treated to not only a much quieter computer, in fact, a nearly silent one, but also, I believe, uh, 20 degrees less of CPU heat as well. Like, I believe at the like at idle, the processor would be around probably like lower 30s, like to maybe even upper 20s. And I think like under like even like under a typical gaming load, I would say around it would be around maybe mid to upper 30s. And under full load, the CPU would get to around like lower 40s, which is a pretty big improvement over like it's just basically on the old cooler, even under a modest load, the CPU, I think I saw the CPU get up to 60 degrees Celsius. Or like even hotter than that. So that's a pretty that was definitely a night and day improvement in both noise and temperatures. And in fact, this would also encourage me to attempt CPU overclocking. Though, of course, before I even touched any BIOS settings, I did plenty of research and saw like how and really my research was basically I'd searched for my motherboard and my processor and for overclocking guides specific to it. But though I also looked at general overclocking guides for the AMD FX platform. And though another thing the AMD FX processors came to be known for was overclockability. In fact, I believe the world record for the highest ever overclock, I believe was actually set on an AMD FX processor. Well, though this would have been this would have been achieved with liquid nitrogen. I believe I was able to achieve about 4.2 gigahertz all core, and I really wasn't sure what like core voltage to use. Like at first I just tried stock voltage, and under Prime 95 stress test, the CPU would fail. I think about like 10 minutes into the test, and so the one thing that perplexed me was everyone else I saw that was overclocking, they would raise their voltage to at least 1.3 volts or more. And when I did that, my temps just skyrocketed, like almost to almost to 70 degrees to 70 Celsius, which is T junction for the AMD FX processors. And so just through some more tweaking, I believe I settled on about 1.26 volts on the V core, and uh and I believe I found that after about a 1 to 2 hour stress test in Prime 95, the CPU was stable. And so I proceeded to use the computer with those settings, and I've never had a lick of trouble. It's been perfectly stable. And I guess I could have took it a little bit further, but from my understanding, the motherboard that I had was actually not really recommended for overclocking due to having a few due to having an underpowered VRM. Like I believe it only had a 4+2 phase VRM, which by today's standards is pretty weak. But at least I guess for the time it was, I guess, decent. But another problem that would plague the FX platform was really all but the more expensive motherboards would have underbuilt VRMs, like even so much that the 8-core processors would, like, even at stock speeds, would actually overheat the VRM. And so really this kind of limited basically how high I could push the overclock. And I mean, like I guess had I experimented a little more, I could have probably achieved maybe 4.3 or 4.4 gigahertz stable, but just I wasn't really like willing to put hours into stress testing to get this stable and to get a higher overclock stable. And the thing is, since that computer and also my computer today are really the only computer I have, I kind of need it to be reliable. Like, I don't want I can't have it leaving me frustrated or upset because if it crashes or blue screens on me in the middle of playing a game or recording a video, or worse, participating in a skate event, because because I'm running an unstable overclock. And though really this would be my only foray into overclocking because the processor that I would have after this didn't have nearly the overclocking potential of this one, and my current computer, from my understanding, basically the way you go about overclocking isn't quite the same as it was in the era the FX processors were relevant, and and also for the same reasons of me needing my stability in my computer. I'm just like, it just doesn't really seem all that worth risking stability for maybe a 10 to 15% uplift in CPU performance, if that, and significantly higher operating temperatures. Though as for this computer I'm talking about, I believe the overclock would have raised temperatures by about 10 degrees or so, but even then, the CPU heatsink was still more than sufficient to handle it. But so really from there, though I also over the years would upgrade this computer. I believe first I would upgrade the RAM from the 8 gigabytes that it came with to 6 gigabytes or 16. And how I went about that was I just purchased the same RAM kit on Amazon that Core K had actually sent me with the computer parts, and like I was able to find the exact RAM kit on Amazon, and I just opted to buy another 8 gigs and fully populate all the slots to get up to 16 gigs. And then though these purchases would happen either on my birthday or on Christmas, because those were really the only times where my mom would be willing to allow me to spend money towards something that's not either food or clothing or things that are required for survival. But though after the RAM, I think next I would upgrade the SSD. And what I went with there was again, because I was budget constrained, I had to go for a I wasn't really able to spend much over $50. And so what I ended up going with was an AdLink S20 256 gigabyte SATA SSD. Though SATA was really my only option because this motherboard was really too old to have M.2 slots on it. Though I didn't know about this at the time, but you actually can buy an adapter card that like plugs into a PCIe slot and allows you to plug M.2 SSDs into a motherboard that doesn't have M.2 slots. Though at the time I didn't know about this. And though this presented kind of an interesting problem because going from a 1 terabyte boot drive to a quarter terabyte boot drive meant that if I was to clone my operating system over to the new drive, I would have had to go through quite the process. Like, I think I would have had to I had to shrink the partition, and even that in itself required like, let's just say it required purchasing I believe it was Ease US, like in order to manipulate the partition, because like a Windows wouldn't let you do that. And it was just quite the, like, cloning it was just quite the process that it would have been easier had I just like opted to install Windows 10 from scratch and just like copy all my files over from the old drive to the new drive. Shortly after my SSD upgrade, I would also take the hard drive from my previous computer, the one I talked about in my previous episode, in order to upgrade my storage further. Though what I did was I took the drive out of the HP computer. I put it in this computer, and I think I would have transferred files off of it once I installed it. And then I think from there, I used the command prompt, or I think it was the disk partition in the command prompt to erase the drive so that I could repurpose it when I was done transferring the files. And which now meant that I would have 3 storage drives in my computer, but it was still worth it to me to have as much storage space as I could. And also otherwise that hard drive would go unused. And I thought that this would just be a good way for me to repurpose it. The next notable upgrade I would buy for this computer would be basically an internal card reader, and also but it would also with USB ports by I believe it was Easy DIY was the brand name it was sold under. And this just really is just like a box that takes up a 5 1/4 inch drive bay and it would plug in, and it would have all these cables you'd plug into the internal USB headers on the motherboard, and it would also use, I believe, your USB 3.0 header for the card reader, but though it also would provide one USB 3 port as well. Though this would mean that the USB 3 on the front of my case would be unused unless I would choose to get an expansion card to add to be able to use that, but I ended up not doing that. And my reason for this was I forgot to mention one of the features of my old computer, that the HP it had a built-in card reader. And why this is a feature I wanted to have in this computer was I have me and my mom often would share a digital camera, and I think a bit later she would buy another digital camera that she'd ended up giving to me because she doesn't really know how to use all the features, and she just kind of let me have it, and which I can't thank her enough for, because I would be able to use it to take pictures to send to my friends, as some may find this a bit hard to believe, but I even today do not have a cell phone. So this really is my only way to take pictures. And and to get those pictures onto my computer, really the only way to do it was to have a card reader to read the contents of the SD card. And really I mean, like I could have just got one of those USB card readers for this purpose, but my room tends to be a mess, and I tend to lose things, and rather than that thing be something that I could lose, I decided to have it be something internal to my computer. And that's really why I opted for that, though this would force me to use cases that still had drive bays in them, even though modern cases never have that, really in favor of having more front airflow for fans, and really the main purpose of those bays being made obsolete by flash media means that not many computers need to have those anymore. Though there's some upgrades or modules would still use those, which means I guess it's not like drive bays, I guess, aren't totally obsolete yet. Though anyway, that's just another that was just kind of another thing to note, like as for upgrades. Though really from there, my computer, my experience using this computer has mostly been smooth sailing apart from a few notable problems. I guess the first one was really the CPU fan noise. That was really more of a personal preference than actually a problem with the computer. So, my first actual problem, I believe, happened when I first installed the new RAM. And, this seems to have kind of started since I installed the new RAM. And what would happen was, I'd be using my computer, and all of a sudden it would just hard lock up. It's basically the screen would just be frozen, and it would just be totally unresponsive. And even to the point where I think in order to, and it's basically I had to reset the computer. I don't remember if it was possible to press and hold the power button to restart it, or I would have physically had to either unplug it or flip the power switch on the power supply to basically interrupt the electricity to the computer to hard restart it. But this problem, it actually kind of got quite annoying, and even so much so that one day when I was trying to play Fortnite with my friends, I just ended up when that happened, I just took half the RAM out of my computer, and I just continued playing with just 8 gigs of RAM. Because at the time I didn't know how to resolve the issue. But I ultimately was able to fix this by changing I believe one of the settings in the BIOS. I think from auto to DOCP. And I think I had to select one of the preloaded RAM profiles that way. And as I believe it would have been just set to auto, and I would have had to just set it to the rated RAM speed, because if I just left it on auto, it would just stick to, I think, whatever the lowest speed for DDR3 RAM, which I think would have been 1333. So in order to get it to run at 1600, I would have had to just select that speed in the BIOS. But I can't exactly explain to you why this was the case, but just selecting it from auto to DOCP fixed the problem, and I never had that issue since. The next major problem I would have with this computer is kind of at first it seemed a bit catastrophic, but it turned out to be better than what I thought. So one night I believe I would be believe I wanted to play a Minecraft mod pack, and I believe I would like single player. And so I loaded out. So I started loading up Minecraft or modded Minecraft, and then just all of a sudden I heard a fairly loud pop from my computer, though it probably would have been louder if I would have not have had headphones on. And then just my monitors went black. And understandably, this would have really had me concerned. This would have been very concerning to me. But well, I just put my I just got to troubleshooting the problem, and I just kind of I kind of gave the computer tower kind of a look over, and I found a kind of a burning smell, which I was able to narrow down to the power supply. And so what I did was, well, my room was a mess at the time, so I would have taken my computer out of my room to actually to the living room, or what at least what in our house we're using as our living room. And I basically I took my, I believe I actually still would have had the Thermaltake power supply that I stopped using earlier because because the fan was wearing out on it. But I never would actually throw this power supply out. I would just keep it as a spare, just because all the power supply still was functional, just the fan was getting worn out, and I wouldn't I wouldn't trust it long term. But in an emergency, I would use it as a spare, like in a time like this. And it turns out I would have to use it to get my computer back up and running. Though at the time my mom was on the phone with one of her friends, and she was like, "Well, why is my son in the living area making noise or whatever?" And when she was done with her phone call, I had to explain to her that I was having a problem with my computer. And the reason I was in the living room was because that would have been a more convenient place for me to work on it. Because what I would have had to do was take the old power supply out and put in the new power supply, or at least the power supply I was having to use for the time being. And also I also wanted to use the TV as a monitor, to at least for the purposes of troubleshooting my computer. And so I had to explain that to her. And I was able to get the computer back up and running, and it turns out my fear that the motherboard and other parts of the computer would have received damage from the power supply failing was not the case. Whereas the computer turned right back on when I put when I replaced the power supply. Though I got the one thing, there was one kind of slight mishap, because where just I hastily put the new power supply in without really putting a second thought into routing cables. So I could just, rather than doing actual cable management, I just would have stuffed the cables randomly wherever they would fit. And but what ended up happening was one of the cables would have lodged itself in the CPU fan, preventing it from turning. And so when I turned the computer on, the CPU fan would be jammed in place and not allowed to spin. And I wouldn't notice this immediately, but I would not actually boot the computer up into Windows. I just went into the BIOS just to see if everything was still at least okay on that end. And I think only by the end, like I would be in the I would have the computer on in the BIOS for about 2 to 3 minutes. And this was still, I think, when the CPU was overclocked. And though when I was getting ready to turn the computer back off to restart it, to boot it back into Windows, I think I would have glanced at the CPU temp and I would have seen it really high. Like, I think I would have seen it like reach like upper 60s, almost 70 degrees Celsius. Or whatever the T junction for the FX processors were. And then when I turned the computer off, I would touch the CPU heatsink, and it was so hot that I couldn't touch it for more than a second. And then I noticed what was actually wrong. One of the cables from the power supply was jamming the fan. And that would have given me a bit of a scare, but at the very least, from my understanding, even with the CPU in that overclocked state, the thermal protections would still kick in and protect the CPU from getting damaged. And so, really from there, I was able to boot back into Windows, and I was able to at least quickly load up Minecraft while the computer was still hooked up to my mom's TV. And at least and from there I was able to verify the computer was still working, and then from there I put it back, I set it back up in my room. Though I believe around the next a payday, at least for my parents, I think then I was able to obtain a new power supply, or at least when my parents got their next paycheck. And really, because at this point I was still relying on their income to fund my computer stuff, I had to choose a power supply that would be within what they're willing to spend, and I believe I chose a EVGA 600 watt non-modular power supply that I think would have cost about $70 at the time, about $30 more, about $20 more than the Thermaltake was, but I was willing to pay a little more for a power supply that, at least in theory, would last longer, and because it would be of better quality. And Oh, I think I'm remembering this incorrectly. It was the EVGA power supply, the 600 watts non-modular. That was the one that blew up, and what I ended up replacing it with was actually an EVGA 650 watt fully modular power supply, and this would be my very first modular power supply. And really from there, and I was able to make use of uh, the modular power supply and only plug in the power cables that I needed, which would have been the 24 pin for the motherboard, I think the 8 pin for the CPU power, and and I think I would have needed one of the SATA power cables for my 3 hard drives. Though I didn't need to use the PCI Express power because my graphics card doesn't have a power connector. My RX 460 I was using at that time. So really from there, I had no other problems, though there was one issue that even would plague my sister when I would eventually give that motherboard and processor to her to upgrade her computer, which was that whenever the power would be interrupted to the computer, and then you turn the computer back on, but instead of booting into Windows, it would throw an error message stating that overclocking had failed. Even without even though the CPU would be at even with the CPU at stock speeds, it would still throw that message. Now that I think about it, my only theory would be that was referring to either to memory overclocking, because in order to run the memory at its rated speed, I guess that's still technically considered an overclock, because I think I had higher speed RAM than what the base speed of DDR3 would be. Either that, or there's just some kind of possibly a firmware issue with that motherboard. I don't know, but that just would be a problem. That would just be an issue that I would have to deal with, and the way to fix that would be to clear the CMOS, and then after that I would have to go back into the BIOS to reapply my overclock settings, my fan speed settings, and my memory, my RAM settings. Which so it's annoying, but at least as long as I don't unplug my computer while it's on, or we don't have a power outage, I wouldn't have to deal with that issue. Though that was just a problem I would have had to. I just ended up having to live with that problem because I didn't know if there really was a fix for it or not. Though really from there, I didn't have really any further problems, at least that I remember. And I believe I would use this computer for. I think I would have built it in 2018, or maybe late 2017. I don't remember which, or remember quite when. And I think I would use it until about the middle of 2020, because in about May of 2020, I actually would meet another I would meet another friend on I think on Otcraft Obsidian, at least in that time, that would that would offer to send me free computer parts, which I also accepted, and that would be how that would be how my next computer that I am to talk about in the series would come about. Though that'll be a story for the next episode. Though towards the end of the life of this computer, really, as a stopgap measure, I would, so the, basically the, out of that second, deal that second exchange I would have with that other person, I would receive a new processor and a new graphics card, or well, new to me. These weren't brand new. These were at least a few years old. I would receive a processor, a 16 gig DDR4 RAM kit, and a graphics card. Though I will disclose for this video what the graphics card was, which is an XFX AMD Radeon R9 390 graphics card with 8 gigs of VRAM. And I opted to put that graphics card in this computer just as a stopgap measure, just to give me at least an upgrade for the time being, while I wait for I think at my plan, at least at the time, was, in order to make this upgrade fully happen, to also use the CPU and the memory that was given to me. My plan was just to get to buy a motherboard for my birthday, and then I would just put the motherboard, the new motherboard, the new RAM, and the new processor in my existing case, and then just kind of upgrade upgrade my computer in place as it is with those new parts. So that was not exactly how that would pan out. So I'm not gonna spoil it for the next video though. But so when I put the R9 390 graphics card in place of my RX 460, one problem immediately became apparent, and that is that graphics card, at least according to AMD, was a 265 watt TDP, and which my previous graphics card, the RX 460, was only a 75 watt TDP. And this card would require an 8-pin power connector and a 6-pin power connector. And my power supply, at least that I had at the time, would be sufficient, but just barely. And because I believe after putting this graphics card in my computer, I would sometimes I would have a few random shutdowns. And at first, I think I feared that the graphics card would have that graphics card I was given would have been slightly defective, but later on, I would get another new power supply, and that actually cleared up those issues. So I'm guessing, in retrospect, it just would have been that power, so that I would have just been pushing that power supply to the edge of what it had been rated to handle, especially with my overclocked processor as well. Though the combination of that of that power hungry graphics card and my overclocked CPU in a case with not a whole lot of airflow, that basically meant my computer would become an oven during intensive gameplay sessions. Because if I went over to my computer and touched the case, it would actually feel warm, and that like never happened with my previous hardware. And I'd noticed during intensive gameplay sessions, at least, that would actually fully utilize the graphics card, which I think at this time still would have been Fortnite. I'd noticed that the temperature of this graphics card would actually reach 80 degrees Celsius, and the fans would at least the graphics card's fans would reach in excess of 3,000 RPM. Just like basically trying to keep that temperature from getting any higher. And this also meant that the noise levels would get almost as pretty much about to the extent that I would have experienced with actually before upgrading the CPU cooler. And in order to rectify this, I at first I actually bought a kit of I believe 5 140 millimeter fans. I believe they were Arctic branded, and though these fans also had the feature that that each of them had, I believe, a pigtail, which would allow if you're using more than one of the fans, it allowed them to be daisy chains so that you could hook more than one fan up to a single fan header. And I believe what I would have done is I would have put 2 of those fans in the top of the case, and I believe I might have, I don't remember if I would have put another fan in the front, though I think I wouldn't have bothered with that, because I also had 3 hard drives installed in the case. And so I think I would have put a fan in the side panel, because that case actually had provisions for you could have up to 2 fans mounted in the side panel, though one of those would have been blocked by my CPU cooler. So, but when I put the side mounted fan in, I would have noticed that at least that fan would make an odd like humming sound, and at least from what I was able to research online, that actually would be caused by a sort of turbulence, like whenever you have a fan. So it's like whenever you have a case fan that's pulling in air through a actually just through holes in a sheet of metal, as opposed to an actual fan grill, that would create like a kind of air turbulence that would make a humming sound that you wouldn't have otherwise. And that noise actually would bother me, and so well, because my computer's in the room I sleep and it's always turned on. And so what I ended up doing, at least until I would get a new case, would be I just took off the side panel and I just left it off. Really just in a vain attempt to keep the temperatures and fan noise at least to a tolerable level. Though it was pretty clear that this case wasn't really able to handle the increased heat output of that graphics card, in addition to my overclocked CPU, which actually would also produce a significant amount of heat as well. So though I believe I would be using my computer in that state for, I'd say, about roughly 2 weeks, and then I actually was able to buy the motherboard, and then I believe I also would have opted to buy a new case in order to build the next computer in the series. So, really, to wrap this one up, this computer, I couldn't have been happier with it. Despite the whole controversy around the AMD FX processors that I addressed earlier in this video, that did not one bit hurt my pride in this build, and really what mattered to me at the time was that the FX processor was an upgrade over my previous processor. And this build really gave me my first foray into PC building, as well as CPU overclocking, and it also and I guess also towards the end how to deal with how to deal with increased with insufficient airflow, like how to improve case airflow. And though I'd also mention when I installed the R9 390 in this computer to upgrade the graphics card, at least in Minecraft, I noticed a CPU bottleneck. Though this would be a trend that would continue throughout my computer experience. It's just whenever I were to upgrade my graphics card, Minecraft would be the game that would show CPU bottlenecks the most out of all the games I play, because of its lack of multi-core optimization. But with this computer, I couldn't thank it really enough, and also the friend that I met on ACO at that time, who was kind enough to donate these parts to me. And also when I would upgrade to the next computer in the series, I would give these parts to my sister at least to use, for her to use until I would be able to upgrade her to a more capable platform down the road. But I'm not going to. That'll be for a future episode of my series. So really, I guess that'll be that is it for my first the first computer I built, the AMD FX 6300 computer. And if you've enjoyed this this video ended up being quite long, but if you've enjoyed what you saw, remember to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for what's gonna come next in the series. And if you want to see my next videos, be sure, if you want to keep up with my videos, be sure to hit the bell for notifications. And this is Dusty Circuit signing off, and peace out.